You gotta listen to the man upstairs versus the man downstairs. I came across this post on Reddit the other day, and it's in the subreddit, or I don't know if that's the proper term, but it's called Guy Cry. Okay. And it's the conversations in there are interesting to say the least. Man or woman, you might find interest in checking some of those conversations out. But I came across this thread and I thought it was super solid. I think that a lot of guys get the wrong message around what it means to be a man. And I think that a lot of men are leading secretly, quietly miserable, lonely lives, if I'm being honest, because they listens to the man downstairs versus the man upstairs. Anyways, I'm going to read this thread and put it on the screen, and I want to talk about it. It said, "My name is Bill. I'm 65 years old today, and I'm alone. No family, no kids. I had one close friend, but he's gone now. I want to give some advice to all the young men out there. If you've ever read online that being single is the best life, trust me, you're being misled." And I agree. I agree with that. And I think here's the thing. Being in an intimate relationship is one of the most difficult things that you can do as a person. I think the two most difficult things that you can do as humans, at least from my Western point of view, is start a business and be in an intimate relationship. Those are the things that challenge you the most as a person. They bring up the most of your stuff. They require personal development to stay successful over the long haul. And you'll really only be as successful as your level of personal development and willingness to know and understand yourself on a deeper level. That being said, I think a lot of people do get hurt in relationships, and then they go into a lot of hedonistic behaviors and call it healing, when in all actuality, they're setting themselves up to be in poor Bill's situation here. So he says, if you've ever read online that being single is the best life, trust me, you're being misled. I used to think the same way. I had plenty of hookups, affairs with married women, and visits to escorts and P-words. But I've never built a family or got married. Now I have money, I'm retired, and I can travel anywhere, but feel like, what's the purpose? I want, but don't feel. I'm alone. And loneliness eats away at me every day. And see, what happened is you have someone that ultimately chased short-term pleasures, instant gratification, things that didn't require any level of personal development, emotional maturity, spiritual development, right? But just sacrifice these greater things on the altar of what feels good right now in the moment. And that's the trap. And now he's saying, you know what? I'm lonely. I've had plenty of hookups. I've indulged in all sorts of different things, and it's left me feeling lonely, and the loneliness eats away at him every day. So we can assume that there's a level of sadness. We can assume that there's a level of depression, and research shows like we need to be connected to people if we want to live a longer, healthy, more fulfilled life. And honestly, I have empathy for this, because there was a time, it was a very short period of time in my life where I got out of a relationship. I had a lot of hurt feelings. I had a lot of unresolved things. And so I was basically just I was in the streets. I'll just put it like that. I was outside, and it felt really good for like a few months until it felt really horrible. And I was like, what am I actually doing? Like, on a spiritual level, I felt unwell and unhappy. And one day, like, I just had a breakdown after, an interaction with a woman, like another one of my late night escapades, you could say. And I was just like, my body started talking to me. Like, I was abandoning myself. I was abandoning myself physically, spiritually, and, for these short-term pleasures and instant gratification. And, I'm telling myself it's fun, but my body's telling me something different. My spirit's telling me something different. And so I can tell you I'm in a much better place now being in a committed relationship and in building something. And, you know, having somebody there who's with me in the highs, who's with me through the lows, who, you know, I can celebrate with, and also who I can just be myself when I'm down bad with. And, you know, there's no judgment. It's just unwavering, unconditional support, you know? And it takes work to build and have and maintain and keep something like that, but it's so worth it, in my opinion. And it looks like it's probably worth it in Bill's opinion too. But he wrote, I'm writing this to tell young men that while having fun and chasing pleasure might feel great for a while, getting married and having kids is also an important part of life. Chasing empty sex will only leave your life feeling empty in the end. And I want to say this, like, I don't know that kids are for everybody. I don't even know that getting married is for everybody. But at the end of the day, the message that I take away from this is choosing purpose over pleasure more often than not is what's going to lead to a greater sense of fulfillment. But if most of your time, especially when you're young, is spent chasing pleasure as opposed to purpose, well, it'll leave you feeling empty in the end. And that is 100%. I've seen that to be true in my own life. When I trend a little bit more towards like 50, 60% of my time being spent on things that give me pleasure, I get out of balance. I get off track. My mood starts to deteriorate. My productivity starts to go down. And there's seasons in life where, you know, you kind of lean more towards pleasure, but if you do that too long, you know, it's not going to feel good. And that's when you have to kind of check yourself and lean more into that purpose. And I do believe like becoming the man or the woman that you need to become so that you can have a mutually beneficial and fruitful and fulfilling relationship, like that is purpose-driven work, in my opinion. But chasing empty sex, chasing money, chasing anything really will leave you feeling empty in the end. Instead, I think what's most important is to prioritize purpose. Prioritize long view. Prioritize not what feels good right now, but what's going to make you feel good in the future. Okay. That is some serious advice that I would give to all young men. As someone who chased money and made a lot of money at one point, as someone who, you know, would sometimes be with multiple women in 1 week, you know, as someone who was also in the military and very purpose-driven and disciplined, like I've experienced, you know, a good amount of things. From my point of view, I'm so happy that I've learned the lesson that Bill is saying, you know, here about 40 years before Bill, unfortunately. And it's my hope that if you're watching this video and you're thinking, hey, having lots of hookups is the move, you know, chasing these external sources of pleasure is the move, and even sometimes doing it in the name of healing and being free and whatever, like, well, chasing vanity is going to leave you unfulfilled. So anyways, let me know your thoughts on this. What do you think about what Bill has to say? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I recognize that everyone is always in, you know, everyone's on their own journey, and that's what informs their perspective. But I tend to agree with Bill, and I'm so grateful that the way that I'm moving in life right now, I will have a family, I will have kids, I will have close friends, and I will feel proud that I spent a lot of time pursuing purpose over pleasure so that I could give a good version of me to those around me and ultimately to the world. And I don't have to feel empty in the ways that I have felt plenty of times in my life when I forgot to prioritize purpose. So anyways, again, thanks for watching another video. Let me know your thoughts on this one, and I'll see you in the next one.